All righty, I'd like to welcome everybody back out to the house of God tonight. We'll pick back up 21st chapter of the book of Job, but we'll open up with prayer request and prayer before anything. So if anybody has prayer request on their heart. Yeah, let's remember him, his recovery. Be anybody else? Yeah, let's remember these. Be any others? Yeah, let's definitely remember him. There be anybody else? Let's remember all these. There be. Let's remember all of these. There be. Let's remember this. Remember the lost, most importantly, above everything. You know, I know we say that, and several of us might have a certain person in our mind, but a lot of times it's somebody you never even know. You know, a lot of times it might be somebody sitting right next to you in church on Sunday that says they're saved and does a lot, or does stuff in church and they never even knew God. So remember the lost, remember the ones the devil's got tricked, and remember the church. You know, we're going through a growing season, and the devil's going to do anything he can to fight against you to keep you from doing God's will. But, you know, as long as we put him first, I mean, you know, the more I've read and the more I've studied, the more I've realized that we're allowed to go through the book of Job on Wednesday nights, because God's kind of preparing us for some stuff. God's kind of teaching us some things of how to be patient when it's real hard to be. So just remember all of these. Jerry, do you care to open us up in word of prayer, please? Amen. All righty. There's about 34 verses, so whoever would like to start reading can tonight, we'll just do it how we always do it. If you want to read and that's on your heart, go right ahead. If not, we'll just go on. So whoever would like to start us out can.
Job answered and said, "Hear diligently my speech, and let this be your conversation.
Alrighty, after studying on Job, I want you to ask yourself one thing. What's something that happened to you this week? What is, and you don't have to answer out loud. I want you to ask one thing. What is something that happened to you this week?
I got to stand up and answer. Monday, we went to the graveyard. We went up to Bonnie where my mom and dad were at. We run into Lonnie Lightbox that was there, when he's preacher. We all went in and looked inside the church, the old log church, come back out and stand there in the parking lot. He said, "We got something we use." The man gave him some mustard seed and take them to the estate. We're reaching the evening. Didn't want to go for one. But he's not bothered. We were standing there talking. He said, "You know, every time I run into man, he's just my dad." He said, "I always give you the same because he's like, well, he said, I want you to take some of these mustard seeds and give them out." So I mentioned that. I said, "Small in the floor here. Put them in the sand." I walked to the truck. Opened the truck door. Got them in his hand and we went across it. Shut the truck door, started back on the earth and looked down. Just dropped blood on my hand. And he tell me, I had got the blood out there. I looked at the little bit back.
I'm glad that God still does stuff to tell us He's God. You know, I mean, like, stuff like that has no explanation. I mean, I'm glad that God's still God.
As we were going up through there, he said, it's that you have to try to psych yourself out to go to Daddy's room. And so all the way up there, he was dreading going. He knew he had to go. He was dreading going. And then when we got there, it was just me and him in the cemetery. And then we looked around and there was the pastor. And I told him, I said, I'd sure like to go to that church house. And he said, well, I can fix that for you. So he went over there and he took the key out of his pocket. He went over to the door. And of course, the church is settled and it's actually rotten down. And we weren't on the door and I didn't open it up. I just thought it was such an experience that the Lord brought him back to the very place that he was saved. And instead of it being a bad thing, the Lord showed me how close he was to him. And it was such a blessing to just have that. And when you're lucky enough to be able to say, I know that was you, Lord. That's something. That's how much God loves us. And I'm thankful.
You know, to everybody that thought of one thing that happened to you this week, how many of you thought of something positive? I mean, really, or how many of you was like me, something negative? Like, I mean, something negative would work instead of looking at everything God did for you this week. You know, William had something that he just flat out couldn't deny was God. So, I mean, it implanted right there in the week, but how many of us would have thought like me, something went terribly wrong at work, and I immediately think of the bad thing that happened instead of thinking of what God done that week. You know, I mean, God woke me up and God allowed me to go to work, and I fixated on something that was bad or something wrong that happened, or we were busy or short-handed or I was irritable. I mean, I thought about the bad before I ever thought about the good. And that's what the devil does. And when I was reading through this and I was thinking about Job, Job never once mentioned any of the bad. He always mentioned what God was and what God was going to do. Because, I mean, I'm going to tell you, the past few weeks on me has been a nightmare. I mean, anything you can think of. I mean, work, whatever, church. I mean, everything you can think of the devil's using against me, he is. And how many times do I sit and I ponder on the bad instead of being like Job? Job had all this bad stuff, and he was like, no, I know my salvation is secure in God. I know that one of these days I'm going to have a glorified body. I know that one of these days he's going to raise me out of the grave and I'm going to go home. But he very well could have said, look at all this stuff that's happened to me, and just pondered on it and kicked it around. I mean, because I'm the world's worst. I'll throw a pity party in my own head and y'all never even know it. I just get so down on myself for thinking about what all the devil's put in my way. Be like, man, he's fighting me, or man, it's bad. God woke me up. I've got my health. I was able to work. I've got my wife. I've got transportation to and from work. I've got a church. I've got, a support system and spirit. I mean, I've got so much more blessings than I ever do bad. And then I look at some thing that tomorrow ain't even going to matter. But I'm fixated on that. That's got me all scatterbrained and away from God. But this is just another one of those verses or chapters that Job proves he didn't do what I do. He is trying to give us a roadmap of, hey, this is how you need to react to these things. Because, there's going to be some things that get laid down on your shoulders you just flat out ain't going to be able to carry. I'm just going to tell you that right now. Without God. If you got God, He'll help ease in that load and He'll help carry it a little bit. I've been there, I've done it, because there's a lot of stuff that if I would have just let God help me carry it, I would have made it through, but instead I was a stumbling block to myself. But this is what Job's given us. And he says, hear diligently my speech, and let this be your consolations. Suffer me that I may speak, and after that I have spoken, mock on. As for me is my complaint to man, and if it were so, why should not my spirit be troubled? Mark me and be astonished, and lay your hand upon your mouth. He's literally telling them, you mark my words and your jaw is going to hit the floor at what was about to happen. He said, you're just going to be absolutely flabbergasted. He said, let me just do my talking. Y'all can make fun of me as long as you want. Because I'm going to tell you right now, there's going to be a lot of people that look at you. And if you stand up for what God has impressed on you and what God has laid in your hearts, they are going to stand against you and mock you. And whether that be actually laughing at you or going behind your back and putting you down, that is mockery. In my eyes, mockery isn't just making fun of somebody, it's making light of somebody trying to do something that's for God. Because not all your friends are going to agree with you, not all your family's going to agree with you, not all your church family's going to agree with you. And we live down the day of time where, like you said, when we came in, we was just joking around talking. People don't like to hear the truth. That's just part of it. People's got so soft skin. You got to have tough skin to be a Christian. You do. Because a lot of stuff happens, good and bad. And a lot of stuff happens on accident. A lot of stuff God just goes straight down the middle and says, all right, I am God and we're getting in line. But Job's telling them, he's like, look, y'all are making fun of me and putting me down, mocking me now. But I'm going to tell you what's about to happen. I'm about to get through this, and y'all are going to be stuck wishing you would have never said the things or did the things y'all did. Because when God says it, it goes. So Job has put his entire faith and his entire trust in this tribulation period. A tribulation period that was so much weight on him that he physically could not handle it on his own. And God had to withdraw from him for just a season. But at the very end of it, God came back to him. God gave him his answer. He let him go just as far as he needed to for God to prove his point. And sometimes we might think there is no light at the end of the tunnel. I've been there. The light in my eyes was burnt plumb out. There was no, you look at me and it's like looking at a blacked over glass. There just wasn't any joy. Because I let sin and the flesh take away the joy of my salvation. I didn't lose my salvation, because you can't do that, but I let the world take the joy of my salvation away. And there's been times that I've sat right on this front pew, and the joy of my salvation has been dim. I'm not going to sit up here and lie to you. I ain't just the happiest person ever. The devil works on me sometimes. There's a lot of weight that I carry that nobody ever sees. But at the end of the day, I know that my salvation is far greater than the weight that the world and the devil puts on my shoulders. And it's what Job's trying to tell us. Job's trying to say, okay, look, y'all can sit here and put me down as much as you want, but I know I'm carrying something far greater than you even know what you're talking about. And one of these days, it's going to come out light and your jaw is going to hit the ground and you're just not going to be able to stand it.
Okay, and I asked you, do you know how long
Well, we know that just in the first 2 chapters alone, it was 1 week of silence. So we know there in just 1 chapter, because 1 chapter talked about the entirety of silence. So, it estimated he lived around 210 years, and this went on for a long time. Because when you go later on in, it never really says an exact day. But when you go later on in, the way they're talking, and when one of the sons of the 3 comes in and looks at them, and he kind of talks in a roundabout way that this has been going on for weeks or possibly months. But it never really says.
In the Schofield Bible footnote, I mean, that don't mean it's God, but it says the events recorded in Job appeared within 1 year. I don't know how they get that information.
I'd say that's probably a pretty accurate guesstimation, because when you get into time frames, sometimes they go off like the old scrolls and how they was written. Because I would say if they were anything like anybody else, they'd date them. Like when they'd write them out, they'd write a date on them or whatever. But I would say that's probably just based on how that 1 chapter went, and there's 40 some odd chapters in this. I would say it'd probably be a pretty safe bet to guess that each chapter represented probably around a week's time span, roughly. But we can hardly make it a week when something goes wrong. I mean, poor old pitiful me, I get all sad and sappy. I can barely make it through a day without just being the most crankiest person you ever met, because I get a big pity party. I mean, but we're human, we're flesh, it happens. But can you imagine going through this for a year? I mean, don't get me wrong, the last probably 30% of that time was his blessings and him recouping and all that. But I mean, even the 70% before that and everything going through that, I mean, I couldn't imagine. I can't tell you how many times I've looked at Betty Jo and said, man, I said, it's like month after month. We just keep getting hit, nothing's going right. I'm about sick of this. And, I get frustrated, I get irritated. A lot of times, instead of just going and giving it to God right away, I'll sit and complain a little bit, because I'm human. But we ain't went through nothing like what Job went through. I mean, yeah, we went through some hard stuff, but we ain't went through nothing like this. I mean, maybe in some aspects, some things that have happened, but not the entirety of it. But that's the first thing I do. I like to complain. I'm sure if you ask her, she'd probably tell you he complains all the time. But that's part of one of my downfalls. Instead of saying, thank you, God, for giving me another trial that helps me grow, I say, why'd you let this happen to me? Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of stuff that I went through in my teenage years, and a lot of stuff that I had to go through, and I had to mature spiritually and physically through those years, that if I hadn't, I wouldn't be here right now. I wouldn't have been capable of being a pastor. You're right, because most of the times when you do go through something, it seems like within 3 or 4 months you run into somebody that needs to talk to you. And they're going through the same thing you just experienced, and it's more of a blessing to help somebody get through something than it is to go through it and make it through on your own a lot of times, because you're able to help uplift somebody. Realize the world's you're not alone in it. And, I mean, because at the end of the day, we're all supposed to be helping each other. So when you do get to help somebody and you do show that godly love, I mean, it builds you and the other person. So those trials are a blessing.
Let it go, because that's just like a sprinkle on us. We can't go out and do God's
Right.
I'm nervous.
I mean, I'm right there with you. There's some stuff I hold on to way longer than I
And
can.
I'm just so ashamed of it.
Mhm.
But, you know, I have to pour on it. Jesus pour on it.
Yep. And you do, and God will give you that little step of motivation to throw it down. The devil will throw it right in your face. I mean, he'll put it right. He'll put it right there. You get up off your knees and you say, "All right, God, I'm doing it for you." And you turn around, and it's like he's standing right there waiting. So it's kind of it's a hard situation because we are fleshly. God, I've been there many times, you know. God, I need you to help me let go of this, because I'm going to tell you right now, I was the world's worst hold grudge. I was. And what good does it do me to get behind the pulpit, preach forgiveness if I can't do it myself? And, you know, I wasn't over everything, but a lot of stuff, and a lot of major stuff I just had a problem letting go with. And I'd give it to God. I'd say I'd give it to God, and I swear, devil, you wouldn't turn around, the devil make them do something 10 times worse again, make you even that much madder. But,
You know that old saying, what is it, what don't kill you makes you stronger? I mean, I hold on to that because there's been things that I thought, this is going to take me out. This is, you know, truth, you know, I can't carry it, I can't do it. And then once we try and carry something, that's right.
You know, sometimes I know it's been true with me, sometimes I hold a grudge against people that I didn't really realize I was holding a grudge. I'd be like, well, they did this to me, so they did something really terrible to me, and I was like, well, it don't matter, you know, it don't matter that. Inside, I held a grudge against that person, and if you've ever done that, and then truly forgave them, whether they asked for it or not, how freeing that is. It moves the weight that you really did not know that you were carrying.
there's a many a times I've had to do that. There were many a times that I'd say I'd forgave somebody, but deep down inside I knew I hadn't. You could tell because it ran all over me.
That is you really giving them and forgiving them, that's such a weight.
You know, if I'd been Job after hearing all the garbage that his friends told him, I'd held a grudge against them the rest of my life, more than likely. Well, they said some just vile things to him. Really. I still can't get past after it was the second or third go around when his friend looked at him, said in our words, you know, your kids are dead because of you. Just the nerve that you have to say something. And, you know, if I was in his... Yeah, and they were claiming because he was a sinful, wicked man hiding it, he killed his kids. Imagine that, knowing you're standing trial for something you didn't do, and everybody in the world thinks you're guilty. Yeah. Makes you look at things a lot different, too. And I'll tell you right now, I carried one for months and months and months. I ain't going to say over what, but when it finally came down to it, everything lined up, all the stuff that happened needed to happen. And I saw somebody's life get changed by God, and I realized that, you know, I was supposed to be a man of God, and I held a grudge against this person all the way up until they died, pretty much. Had to repent of that, but I would be around them and I'd be angry. I would, because I was tucking it away deep inside. But
When you do that, you really hurt yourself. You gotta realize that it ain't hurt them. You're holding a grudge against somebody, and it's just saying you it's damaging you more than the person that you're holding a grudge.
Because they really probably don't even realize you're holding a grudge on them. I mean, no, but it's funny how conviction works, ain't it? Conviction only eats at you, not anybody else. I mean, you know, I've seen it, and I'm not saying it's happened here, but just in general, you know, you go to church somewhere, and preacher be laying it down hot and heavy. I mean, God just giving it to him as fast as he can spit it out. And, you know, you can just see it on somebody just fully convicted. And just, I mean, they're miserable. I mean, you know, when I'm up preaching, usually everything's pretty blurry and I can't focus in on nobody or nothing unless God says, you need to look here, you know. But, I mean, when somebody is truly under conviction, God will reveal that to the church, not to single them out, not to put them on a show or make them feel, you know, put out like a sore thumb. He does it so the church can pray. You know, and a lot of times we're guilty of saying, what in the world's wrong with them, instead of saying, God help them. Because, I mean, there's a lot of people going through a lot of stuff nobody's ever going to know about in here. I mean, you're not going to know everything that goes on in my life. You're not going to know every issue I've got or every blessing God's given me. You're going to know, okay, I see Malachi Sunday and Wednesday, and he usually seems in a pretty all right mood, but I don't see Malachi when he's driving 3 hours to and from work, or I don't see Malachi when he's through the work day, or when he has to deal with stuff he's got to deal with in his mind or in his heart. Or I don't see it when somebody calls with a problem and he feels like he don't have an answer. You know, I mean, it's one of those things. When somebody's under conviction of something, instead of being like, man, what in the world, what have they done, or what's wrong with them? It's, God, how can the church help them? You know, how can I help them as a Christian? How can I pray for them? How can I uplift them? You don't have to go to them. You know, we need to do the opposite of what Job's friends did. Job wasn't under conviction, but Job was struggling. He had a problem. And they went straight to him and made accusations instead of sitting back and just praying for him and uplifting him. Because I'll tell you right now, if you want to get hurt quick, go to the church house. I mean, it's just the simplest part of it, because the devil works in the church just as hard as God does. I mean, like, you have all kinds of stuff that if you'll let it and you'll let the devil, he will hurt you with it. Because, I mean, there's been some stuff that's happened to me here that I've just flat out got hurt, and the devil's told me, just give it up and throw it down, nobody wants you there. But if I did that, then I gave in to the devil, but I knew there was people praying for me. And I know I try my best to pray for the church, pray for everybody here. I might fail at it sometimes, fall short, but I try my best. But that's like Job's friends. They were Christian people. They were wise. They were elders. They were looked at on a pedestal by people. And that's the biggest issue you could ever present, is put anybody on a pedestal in the church house. I mean, we're all straight-laced and we're all level. But they were put on a pedestal and they were looked at as these wise men with abundant knowledge, and the first thing they did was put him down. I mean, just because you're smart and just because you got a lot of wisdom and knowledge don't mean you know what you're doing when it comes to serving God. I mean, there's a lot of people that's got a lot of knowledge from their Christian walks of life tucked way back in there, and they might know how this thing works, but they don't know how to use it, and they don't know how to let God use it. Because it don't matter how much wisdom and knowledge I have. If I get behind the pulpit and I preach what I want to preach, not what God wants me to preach, it's just out the window. It don't make a difference.
You know, when you talk about putting on that old coat, the new coat, you know, that new coat has to be waterproof, bulletproof, fireproof. You know, it is so hard sometimes to walk with that new coat on. Because, you know, not only do you hurt yourself, but you hurt for your friends and your loved ones and people that do damage to other people and have no clue. No clue. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But, you know, it is so hard to be bulletproof.
It is. I mean, it's extremely hard, because the devil, I mean, it's not only the fact of you have to sit there and withstand it, it's the devil knows exactly what's going to get to you. I mean, the things that get to Jerry, the devil's not going to use on me, and vice versa. But it's like you said, it's hard to carry that. I mean, it's hard to, I ain't going to lie to you, it's hard to stand up here on Sunday and preach your heart out and know that, some people just wish you to fail. And I'm not saying here, but I'm saying in general. I mean, you can tell when somebody's for you and when somebody's against you. And, it's hard for other preachers. And, I mean, I've been places that I just flat out ain't welcome back at because you preach the gospel and nobody wants to hear it. I mean, it starts digging up and convicting. They don't like that. And, they'll hurt you almost intentionally to keep you from coming back. But it's like I said, you got to be bulletproof, but that new coat's a little bit stronger. But the devil also uses his best tools against you, especially when you're a strong Christian. Because if I show up, I don't read my Bible, I don't ever study for my messages, I don't ever pray and ask God what he wants me to preach, I don't ever pray at all, the devil ain't going to find me at all. He ain't. It's already got me. He's got no use in even fighting. That's one way I look at, okay, I'm on the right track. The devil's fighting me hard, I just need to keep working that much harder. And I'm sure that's what Job thought. Job probably thinking, man, I'm getting hit all directions, but I need to keep going because that means I'm doing something right, even though that it feels like punishment. God's got to be on the other end of this thing. You don't realize how, how helpless the human body is until all it's relying on is God. I mean, you really don't. You don't realize how helpless you are until you are at a moment in your life where you've got to cry out to God and say, I can't make it through this. And we will all experience that at least once, because God will humble you once at least. And I can't help but imagine. It goes down here and it says, wherefore do the wicked live, become old, yea, or mighty in power, their seed is established in their sight with them, and their offspring before their eyes. We see so many evil people, and they do well in natural eyes. They have nice houses, their stuff's paid for, they have wealth, they have fame, they have fortune. And good people do have that as well. God blesses good people too. I mean, some people just have different lives. But when Job's sitting here and he's looking and he's telling them, what about the wicked people? You say that God punishes the wicked, but look at everything they're living in. They're perfectly fine. Some evil people live to an old age. But there comes a point in time that you're going to be humbled at least once by God. Because, we're all supposed to have one chance of salvation. After that, you're not guaranteed. Everything after that's just you're walking on mercy. That branch might stop at any point in time. So Job's looking at them, and he's telling them all this stuff. He says, the bulls, they present offspring. The mama cows have their calves, because that was a sense of wealth, livestock. They have their houses. Their seed is established, so their children are well known and renowned. So they have all this good stuff too. So where's your judgment at there? You say God does this to bad people. Where's it at there? It just fell in on itself. That's man's mindset. It just crumbles. It says they send forth their little ones like a flock, and their children dance. They take the timbrel and harp and rejoice at the sound of the organ. They spend their days in wealth, and in a moment go down to the grave. At the end of the day, it comes down to one thing. We are all going to die. I mean, whether that be a spiritual transition to a glorified body or whether death comes to my door and, I don't wake up or something happens to me. I mean, we're all appointed death. And Job just told him, he said, you know what? It all ends the same. He said, in a moment. Just like that. I mean, we've all experienced, everybody in this room has experienced a death of some sort. One minute you're here, next minute you're gone. I mean, it's as quick as that. Some's a little bit more drug out than others, but when it's time to go, they leave right then and right there. And You know, Job's telling him, he said, hey, where's all this stuff at? He said, they have all this stuff until they don't. You're going to be the same way. We're the same way. You know, just because life's going good or going bad doesn't mean that we're sinful or we're righteous. You know, you can live as righteous as you want, and you can look like you're just bottom of the barrel and not doing well in man's eyes. But that's why it tells us to put our treasures up where the moths and the rust and thieves can't get them. Because, you know, all this stuff down here, it can all be taken from you. I can break into Jerry's house and steal everything he's got. I can hotwire his car and take off. He can replace that. The stuff that he has done for God in his life, I can't ever get a hold of, and it's far more valuable than any rubies or gold or jewelry or any money. But at the end of the day, it comes down to this. When we die, that's all we've got. You have your salvation and what you've stored in heaven. Because it says what you bind in heaven or on earth will be bound in heaven. What you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. You know, what you hold back and what you let go of for God and against God. I mean, all this stuff's going to come into consideration and into factor when you stand before the judgment seat. I mean, I wholeheartedly believe when he tells us our judgment and our things, there's going to be a lot of stuff that Malachi missed out on because I wasn't obedient. He's going to have that book, he's going to have my name in it, and there's going to be a lot of stuff that probably, buddy, if you just did this one small thing, look at what could have happened. But that's where sin comes in the flesh and disobedience. And after it says they go down to the grave, it says, therefore they say unto God, depart from us, for we desire not the knowledge of thy ways. What is the Almighty that we should serve him, and what profit should we have if we pray unto him? You know, we've all had the thought. None of us can sit here and say we haven't. We've all had the thought, man, what would it be like to have money? Or, man, what would it be like to live like that? If you had the kind of wealth that you see on TV and the internet and stuff, would you still serve God the way you serve him? I probably wouldn't. That's probably why he didn't trust me to be a millionaire. I mean, really. And that's what Job's saying here. When it says, what is the Almighty that we should serve him, and what profit should we have if we pray unto him? They've got all this stuff that the world and the devils gave them, and they're looking and saying, what good does it do for me to serve God? I don't need anything else. I've got all this money, I've got my house, I've got all my family. I mean, I got everything I can want for it. It ain't going to do me a lick good to serve God, because he can't give me nothing else. They see the tunnel vision aspect of it. I can't stand a preacher that gets behind the pulpit and says, if you serve God, he'll bless you financially and he'll do this. Don't get me wrong, God has made sure my bills are paid and I have food on the table and I have clothes and stuff. But, you know, you don't get rich serving God with money. I can't stand prosperity gospel. That's just garbage. But I can tell you this much, he has blessed me richly beyond anything money could ever buy. I'm saved, my wife's saved. You know, we're taken care of. We have blessings up there that we don't know about that we put away. I mean, everything you do for God is tucked back to your account. And it ain't going to be anything you buy in heaven or anything like that. It's going to be the spiritual embodiment. It's going to be the spiritual of that blessing. You know, something you can feel, something you can experience. You know, you ever do something down here for God and you just feels good and you say, it just blessed me all over. Imagine feeling that, but not watered down. Everything we feel down here in the spirit has got to be limited because this body could not handle it. But when you get to heaven, you're glorified. It is 100% just unaltered spirit of God. I don't know if anybody else here has, but I have got so intact with the spirit of God. It's happened here several times. I will get behind this pulpit and God will just be giving me the spirit as hard as he can. And it'll turn as white as that projector screen up there, just ice white, and it's like somebody sets it down right in front of my eyes. I can't tell you where I'm at in the church or what's going on other than I feel good and I feel God. I mean, and to come down off that, I ain't gonna lie, it feels like you're about to have a stroke. But it feels good. You feel the Spirit, and it's like this whole fleshly body just goes away, and you're not even in it. Until you feel God, something like that, you missing out. I can tell you that much right now, because I can get excited talking about it. But it's God. It's a little bit of, heard an old preacher man, he used to say, a little bit handful of purpose. God drop you some handfuls of purpose off. Keep on going. It's one of those little mile markers and those stones he places in your Christian walk's life. Said, hey, you can have this right here, but wait till you get to heaven and just keep working. Anybody have anything before I go any further? It says, they are stubble before the wind, and as chaff that the storm carrieth away. God layeth up his iniquity for his children. He rewardeth them, and he shall know it. His eyes shall see destruction, and he shall drink of the wrath of the Almighty. For what pleasure hath he in his house after him, when the number of his months is cut off in the midst? Does anybody know what 21 means? When the number of his months is cut off in the midst? You can be going real good. I mean, I'm a firm believer that God is still God. Jesus is still mercy. God is still God. You disobey him long enough and you just flat out spit in his face, he's going to punch you a ticket. I mean, he will. It's just as simple as that. Now, don't get me wrong. Some people leave here in good standing early on. I think that's just because God used them to run their race. They achieved the blessings that he had laid out for them, and they ran the race fought fine. But there comes a point in time that you finally look at God so much and say, no, I ain't doing it. He said, fine, you ain't doing nothing except wasting all our time anyway. Out of here. I mean, it's just as simple as that. I've seen many of people feel an untimely grave. Many of people thought they had a lot of life left to live in them. And next thing you know, you're standing over the casket looking at the obituary. I mean, I've had a lot of family do that. You know, I ain't going to say who, but I had a family member that got saved and had every opportunity to get right back on track, and they stayed in for a decent amount of time. And then they turned their back immediately on God. And it wasn't a year or two later, I was standing over a casket looking at them. I mean, God's not one to be mocked. He's not. And that's a sad thing to say, but at the same time, Old Testament God is still God. The only thing that changed was Jesus Christ. He said, hold on just a minute, let me talk to him. Because there's been many a times that God should have took me right on out of here, but if it hadn't been for the almighty mercy seat. But, I mean, God don't put up with stuff. I mean, we're talking about the man that killed whole civilizations because they went against him and did the abominations of the world. If God still did those things today, how many people would still fear him? You know, if God sat down and wiped out New York or Knoxville or some major city for living sinfully, how many people would look and say, okay, that's God, I need to serve him. But he can't force it on nobody. He said, all right, it's a free will way now. There is no mediator except Jesus Christ.
Makes me think of the flood. It's like a good flood. That's bad.
I mean, you got the flood, you got Sodom and Gomorrah. God, if there's just 50 down there, well, if there's just 40, if there's just 10, I mean, I guarantee you walk into any major metropolitan city and you ask if you believe in Jesus, the majority of them is going to tell you get away or get lost. I mean, I'm fortunate enough I work in the agriculture industry. Most of you farmers are still God-fearing Christians. I mean, I'm fortunate enough that I can sit down and talk to people about God still. You know, you'll have the one, but 90% of my customer base still talks about God, and it's great. But you get out here and anything else, they don't want to hear about God. You tell them something rough like Sodom and Gomorrah, because the world uses the excuse of the Bible is too rough. The Bible is not too rough. How some people present the Bible is too rough. You can be rough in love, and you can be rough in the spirit, and it go exactly how it's supposed to. But if you're rough in yourself, that's when you start drawing the line between hate-filled preaching and convicting preaching. You know, I'm never one that's going to get up here and air my opinion behind the pulpit. It's just whatever God says is how it lays. But you go out in the world and you tell them why Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed, or you tell them why the flood came through, or you tell them why the children of Israel had to wander around the circle for 40 years, or you tell them that why all these things had to happen, and they don't want to hear it. Well, God's just not like that. Jesus is love. God is love. He is love. But He loves us enough to give us enough common sense that we need to respect and obey Him because He's our Father. You know, if I used a little bit more common sense thinking, I probably got a lot farther with my walk with Christ than I do most days. But they claim it's too rough, for this old-time preaching is too strong, too powerful. Now, I'm sorry, I can't get nothing out of a guy standing up behind the pulpit whispering the whole time that never has any spirit in him, or reads off cue cards or a piece of paper with bullet points. I mean, I can't get nothing out of that. I need to know that if I'm sitting down listening to a man preach that is coming straight from God, rougher he sends it in love, the better I'll take it. Because at the end of the day, that's just God putting me online. If it digs me up and falls me short. But the world don't want to hear that.
You know, I saw a story, it was a lady minister, said that we need a New Testament, that the Old Testament's too good. I mean, she said that, we need a New Testament. I mean, that's where the world's headed.
You know, that's just, you're right, the world's headed, they're regressing. They are.
It's not clear, and it's not, there's a God to be feared, we're supposed to fear.
Yeah. I mean, you have churches that have flat out made a mockery of the gospel. You've got churches that have made a mockery and a show of the pulpit, a mockery and a show of marriage between man and woman, a mockery and a show of what the children do. You know, don't get me wrong, children's ministries are amazing. But when you're in it just for the number, and the show, and the fancy stuff, you know, I'm going to tell you right now, if your children ain't getting taught about the Bible and they're sitting sliding down a slide for an hour, you don't need to be teaching the children. I mean, if I can't walk in and ask them children what they learn and they can't tell me, somebody's not doing their job somewhere. They just care about getting them in instead of... And you have these huge churches that have got 10, 1,100 people just full. And they get them there and they got pumped up music. No, there ain't nothing wrong with a little lively music. There ain't nothing wrong with having instruments. I ain't even got a problem with drums if they're played right. I ain't got a problem with electric guitars or basses. I ain't got a problem with no musical instrument as long as it's played right for the glory of God. But when you get in here and you make a big show on the pulpit and the altar, because that's what this is, not anything else, you've went at it for the whole wrong reasons. And, you know, I'll tell you this. I worked up in Washington County in Jonesboro for several years. And a man looked at me, he said, "Well, you're a preacher, why don't you come visit our church sometime?" Okay, where you go to? I ain't going to name the name of the church. He said, "Yeah, our pastor, she would love to have you." But I got took back real quick and I said, "Excuse me? Well, our pastor would love to have you." I said, "I ain't preaching for no woman I don't believe in." I said, "That's a man's job." I said, "Just like a deacon, that's a man's job." "Well, what makes you say that?" I said, 1 Timothy chapter 2, be the husband of one wife. That's the first qualification of a bishop and a deacon. Well, we believe that was written in the old times when women weren't as accepted in public. And I was like, then you don't believe the Bible. I said, because it was founded on the inspiration of God. And they also believed that it was okay to do things and other things that weren't right and were an abomination. And I'll leave it at that. They believed that marriage wasn't just between man and woman. And I'm like, buddy, you've missed the whole point here. But it's like you said, the world's went backwards. They went straight back. So God gave us the stories of the flood, and He gave us the stories of Sodom and Gomorrah, which these things were happening that we see today back then. You just got to read into it and get deep. And He said, hey, I'm going to come back one of these days. I'm going to burn this whole place up. It's going to happen just like it did here, so go ahead and be ready. And now we're here. I mean, we've went from A to B, and we are living in it. I mean, it says that when the word abomination is mentioned, and it says it offers up an abomination to the Lord, it says it presents a stench in his nostrils. That means God literally goes like that. Do you know how bad of something has to be to make God make that face? A man that is nothing but love and purity, to look at you and go, ooh. I mean, really? I mean, that's kind of a funny way to think of it, but that's what that means. It means God looks down on it with despise, because he laid it all out for us, but like Robin said, everywhere's went backwards in the world. And it's only because of this. The less old-timey preachers you got, the less spirit-filled churches you got, the less members those churches have, the less people they reach. I mean, the devil's going to start fighting here first. Eventually you get over that little speed bump if you put God first, and it might seem like it takes forever, and it might feel like every punch is hitting 10 times as hard. But when you get over it, everybody starts realizing, hey, that place is a house of God. They ain't putting on no show down there. They've got something that, I went down here down the road, and they didn't have what I feel here. I need to go back. It draws. Once you get hooked up on God's power, it starts pulling in. Because I'm going to tell you right now, I visited all kinds of churches. I visited 2 while I lived in Johnson City College, just in case I couldn't make it home on the weekend. I said, well, in case I can't make it home, I'll visit here. I went 2, and I said, I don't care how long I have to drive. I'll just drive home and go to church. I mean, they just make a show of it. And we shouldn't be that way. We should be able to go in the house of God and hear the gospel, hear spirit-filled singing, hear spirit-filled testifying. I shouldn't walk in and know everything that's going to happen before it ever happened. And I shouldn't walk in and the pastor shouldn't be able to put his sermon on Facebook or something an hour before church starts so you can go ahead and get ready for it. I mean, I went to a church and I didn't know nothing about it until I walked in there and they did that. And they was like, all right, I went ahead and posted it so y'all can go ahead and get ready for this. It's like, okay, bye. But I mean, it's sad because the devil's got a grasp on the church. I mean, and I mean, that's a hard conversation in and of itself. Because if somebody goes believing that, it could go real bad real quick. I mean, you set somebody down in line with God and say, hey, that ain't right. That is a hard conversation to have. I mean, like, been there, done that. That is, because you never know, because you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or offend nobody. But you also want to realize that, hey, this is God's way. What you did really wouldn't. And it's not anything us casting judgment, it's biblical. But the devil...
You got to know that moment when you met the Lord, what I'm saying? There's got to be that moment in your life where you don't have somebody you don't change your life.
I mean, it's one of those things. I don't know the day. I don't know the date. I can't tell you the time. But I can tell you a little place up in the hills of Kentucky, and it's in a church that didn't hold as many people as our choir holds. And I can take you right to the spot where God changed my life for the better. Can't tell you no time or date. I mean, I can't.
How old was you?
I was 7 years old. I remember this much. I was tore plumb up. And, I mean, all I said is, God save me. I don't want to die and go to hell. I knew where I was going. I knew I was lost. I knew I was under conviction because I did everything in the world to try to climb under the pews to get away from hearing the message.
And I still
It's like, you know, I can't stand man, woman, or child comes to an altar seeking salvation. And they pray, and you can tell they don't get satisfied, and all you hear in their ear is somebody say, just go ahead and get up and tell the church, you got it, you prayed, you got it. Or, and I'll tell you this, if somebody comes up and prays and says, I think I got it, I'll tell them, keep praying. The little girl that got saved last year at Bible school that I preached here, I guess it was Bible school last year, I can't remember. Oh, my mind runs together so much. The little girl that got saved right here, the first thing she said to me, I said, how do you feel? And she said, well, I think I got saved. I told her, I said, honey, you can't think. You got to know that you know that you know. And I said, I can't do it for you. I said, I'll pray here all night with you. I said, but I can't tell you you're saved on this altar. I said, it's something you have to do for yourself. I said, I know how it feels. I've been there. I said, but you got to give your heart to God. And then when she got down and prayed again, I asked her, I said, if you died right now, where'd you go? She said, heaven. I said, that's a good enough answer for me. I mean, you know, I can't stand putting words in somebody's mouth searching answers from God. I'm not God. I can't do that. So,
Well, you know, what was I've heard people say, you know, everybody that wants to get saved come down here. And, you know, you have lots of people that don't even get saved down there. Yeah. You know, you don't know what I'm going to try to let's go. It's like, you know, everybody's their own convictions. It's a personal one.
the biggest way for anybody to put doubt in my mind over something, I try not to judge over a lot of stuff. I try to search things out in the spirit quite a bit. Quickest way for me to absolutely turn something off is, like you said, who wants to come up here and get saved? Because I'm sorry, if you were in a football stadium with 100,000 people and 20,000 people come down there and pray, 20,000 people did not get saved. Because you know a lot of them were following the crowd. And it's not a crowd thing, it's a personal thing. It's one-on-one. I don't care if Billy Graham down there preaching, Billy Graham can't get nobody in heaven. I mean, he can't. I don't care if you're the most renowned preacher in the world. My preaching and my stuff don't get nobody to heaven. God's conviction does. You know, because I'm just a messenger. That's all I am. It's his message, his conviction, and that's all that can change anybody. That's all I am. And he picked a pretty poor one in my eyes. I'll never feel worthy enough for that. At the end of the day, he did. What time we got? Give me 2 extra pieces of candy, Jerry. We'll call it even.